was desperate, at the time I was 17, 18, unemployed, and I was desperate to get a break. And I knew that if I did get a try, I would grab the chance.
I think it was always going to be boxing. The minute I stepped into the gym as a 10 or 11 year old, boxing just took hold of my heart straight away. I love everything about the sport of boxing.
Hello, I'm Marie Crowe and this is We Become Heroes, the RTE Sport podcast that explores how elite athletes and sports people reach the top of their game and the lessons that they learned along the way. Now, I'm delighted to say that my guest this week is one of Ireland's most talented sports people, an international rugby, basketball and soccer player, and also an All-Ireland football winner with Dublin. Lindsay, Peat, you're so very welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for coming on. So look, you're one of these people that has done it all really and is still going. So we're obviously out of COVID now, well, almost out of it. What are you up to training wise and sports wise?
Well, just before I come on to you, I just got a bit of a bike session in, so a bit of an anaerobic session. So I think this is start of week 4 for pre-season. So it's pretty heavy. I'm kind of off feet at the minute just to manage my load, trying to manage a previous injury that hit just around Six Nations. So at the minute, kind of 4 on feet for everyone and 3 gym sessions. So it's quite intense now at the minute before we head into camp. Please God.
It really is, Lindsay. Do you ever take any downtime, like take a chunk of time off, injury aside, just say, right, I'm going to take a break from years and years of training all year round?
You know what? That's probably no. I always the essence. Actually, that's a lie. This year, we got 6 weeks off after the Six Nations, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I actually was floored. I'd say it was like an narcoleptic for about 2 weeks post Six Nations, because we'd been kind of going for a year. I had broke my leg against England in February, and I had the up on that. I was off it for 6 weeks. COVID hit. I was kind of in a bike, on a bike in that the track thing, I had my own push bike, makeshift walk bike at home. And then I was kind of got a few weights off the RFU, thankfully, to keep me going. And yeah, just trying to get back on the pitch, which I did thankfully in October against Italy, which was our final round in the 2020 campaign. And then we were building kind of what was meant to be World Cup qualifiers in December 2020. Then they were postponed. Then we were building for January 21 for Six Nations. They were postponed. Qualifiers again in March, postponed. And then eventually we got finally confirmation that we were going to have a kind of redefined championship with just 3 matches and 2 pools just to get some games in, with COVID still being rampant and impacting so many nations. So we're kind of over a year really intensely training, kind of peaking and plateauing and peaking again and getting ready for competition. So to be honest, I was exhausted. I needed the 6 weeks, and it's probably the first time in a long time where I wasn't so intense that I had to train and I felt I was going to lose anything. I actually just was floored. And I think a lot of the girls were, it was great to get back on the pitch. It was great moments. We were very privileged to keep training when the country was basically in turmoil and lockdown. But just as regards kind of the recovery, I took every minute of the 6 weeks. So I kind of just cycled over to mum and dad's, which was about 12k over from my house and 12k back. Cycled out to Sandy Cove, had a swim. Kind of made it enjoyable and, functional. But I got on my bike, did very little weights, and I kind of enjoy just catching up with my wife and son and my family and my nephews and just people I hadn't seen really, with training and then lockdown as well, So it was nice.
I know that, obviously through it all, you were staying really positive, despite the upheaval that was, it was affecting everybody, but when it's really affecting people who are trying to get ready for a game and the goalposts keep shifting. But how difficult was it, Lindsay, with all those cancellations and postponements?
It was really hard, but I think the hardest was when they cancelled the World Cup and put it back a year. I think that really floored me, especially because I'm kind of on borrowed time. And the body, especially in the age, and yes, there's still the competitiveness, but outside of that, I still have a family I have responsibility to. I still have a career I should be focusing on, and it's not. My focus is always back on the next goal and the next match and the next challenge, and that's really hard, and that's been the overshadow of my life, the last 25 years. So that really floored me. I can't lie. I really probably still haven't kind of got over that, and the fact that we're not qualified for World Cup yet. So it's starting to come back, but I won't really be able to fully trust it until I can see these are exact dates for our qualifiers in September or whenever they're going to be. I think this will be September, please God, but until I see specific dates and fixtures and location, I'm kind of a bit keeping everything at a distance. Now I'm training as hard, don't get me wrong, it's not nice being off beat, you're still training for something, but I can't lie, I think I was fairly going off the cancellation.
You say you're on borrowed time, but like you're obviously still playing at the very top level that you can, and you have goals because I've just heard them, and you're looking at World Cup qualifiers, and that means World Cup. Do you think you're ever going to be able to give up, Lindsay?
Yes. I don't want to be this athlete that's, kind of hanging around and not being able to compete. I am disappointed, if I'm honest with you, Marie, about the Six Nations. I didn't feel I was involved as I have been before, like looking at stats, say, from the Wales and Scotland game of the 2020 campaign, 17 carries, 19 carries, you're very involved, you make a game line. Even the Italy game in October 2020, I felt like a really good game. I was involved in an awful lot, got a try, and I was buzzing. And this campaign, I don't know whether it's kind of a little bit overtrained going into it or a little bit overtired. I'm not sure. It was struggling with a knee, but I don't want to be. I'm so competitive. I don't want to be second best. Like, I don't want to be on a bench with an impact sub. I want to be number one. Like, that's what I want to be. And, I'm looking over your questions and I'm going over all the moments of sport that really inspired me. And it's those moments, even I got to relive through my career, that as a kid I was practicing with my dad. Like, he used to, clay pigeon shooting. It was this tiny trophy and he used to be at the top stairs kissing it like I was on an all-iron podium. And I got to keep that memory, but I don't want to. Everyone has, CJ Sanders said that he, as an athlete when it's time to go. And my goal now is just the qualifiers, and I don't see anything past that right now. I still hopefully would like to still play club and provincially, but internationally it's so much commitment. And as I said, I have so much to juggle outside of that. I can't always be where I want to be number one, and that frustrates me. And there's no easy answer to that. So, right now the body is slow and I've no control over that either. And I want to be training as hard as everyone else. So it's a tough one. It's a conundrum, and it's one that I'm struggling with, and I'm probably definitely a lot more realistic and closer to where I am. But then there's still other levels that, as I said, I can go back to club and start biting the head off someone trying to be cool with that. I'm not going to change my personality. As I said to you before we came on, I was like playing duck, duck, goose with a group of 12 kids, and I'm like, he's testing me to see if I'm quick enough, and I chased him at full pelt and before he got this thing. Like, I'm pathetic at times. I'm so competitive, and I still have that. But as I said, I just always want to be number one. Like, no matter what we're doing in the gym, no matter who is competition with me, that's where I thought.
Do you think you'll need some help, as in some psychological help, when the time comes? Because people say athletes die twice. They die when they stop playing their sport, and then they die when they die.
Yeah, and I've reached out probably in the last 12 months, actually, and kind of, getting some advice and counselling around, just because for me, what animal is on the pitch doesn't always, I have that strength and resilience and all these amazing qualities that I've read through, and sometimes I haven't utilised them. And actually, your podcast with Paul Flynn, when he said Pat Gilroy, he loved that he's able to bring that competitive and that drive and that goal into his career, as Paul did that as well. And that's one thing probably a regret of mine, is that I didn't juggle the two. My focus was on sport, and I kind of, the job paid the wages, but I went back and I did PE, and I have a degree just like Paul Flynn, and he went on and he's done great things in the GPA, and whereas I've just settled for, I suppose, not the easy way, don't get me wrong. There's other factors, but yeah, probably a truth, like I stuck in with a job that was able to facilitate training and, stuff like that. So yeah, it's, if I've any, I think, there's a great book by, I don't have to go back to that, but like it is a big thing. It is a big thing for me, and even my sister, when I said it, she was like, "Oh, thank God," because I think actually, sport ended. But I don't think my love affair with sport will ever end. It'll just shift. The roles will shift, and yeah, that's
Would you do coaching? Do you think? See you on the sideline in an Ireland final or in some sort of AIL final, something like that?
I think I will down the line, but like the thing about it is, like, I'm all or nothing. I just think I've been so involved in sport from a playing side. I don't want to make the wrong decision and just focus in, and I think I need to be ready as well. I need to be fully. I suppose that's another thing I took from Paul's podcast, that you have to be so at ease with yourself and so accepting of yourself. And when I'm ready to accept that I'm no longer a player, and that now my strengths have to rely in guiding other players like coach has done for me, then I'll be ready. But I think I need a lot of increased emotional intelligence, because I think the way suits all and it doesn't. I'm quite unique in that. I'll prove you wrong kind of thing. That's where I thrive best. But I think a lot of athletes need a lot of TLC, or they need a little bit, they need the margins moved, and I'm not ready for that. I need a lot of upskilling in a lot of areas, but definitely down the line it's something I want to do, but not right now, I don't think.
Yeah, I can imagine you doing it, actually. That's the thing, I can picture you. So we're going to get through our questions now. Lindsay, what is your earliest memory of sport?
Oh, it's funny. I often get asked how I got into sport, and it really was my mum, right, on a defining moment where she sent me to basketball. But kind of there are like fleeting memories of my time at ABFRC. I don't know if you know that club through your boys' soccer. So Artane Beaumont, family recreation club. So this was like our community centre, and the club was derived from that. And our club colours were Barcelona, so it was that old green and blue, and I loved it. But I remember a mammy of a girl I went to school with, Kay Woods. She took this team, all girls. We played in Rockfield Park. I remember setting up the goals, and I remember losing every match. One particular match, it was a shitty night, in these summer nights, pitty rain. It was a really slippy surface, and we won 1-0. I remember getting on my bike, saturated, in my Barcelona makeshift kit, heading down to recreation. I don't know why Kay was at bingo and she wasn't at the match, but anyway. We won after losing every single match of that season. And that's probably one of my memories that I don't give credit to. And I know another guy, Willie Doyle, who was another, he had that fabulous Jerry Ryan kind of mullet, the brush back, and he had a cool tash. And Willie was definitely much more a soccer man. And that's where Kay was unique, because none of the mummies, it always would have been daddy's take it, just ramped in because she wanted just to get the girls involved. And though she had no training, and I know her husband was very involved, she just got out there and got the community together. So that was another memory. But really, I remember, obviously, I'd taken a stretch. And I remember, typically Dublin, I don't know whether you've experienced this in your time up here, but with your kids. But to me, at the time, she probably wasn't even a granny, but I remember this granny going, she's too big to be playing this age group. Where's her birth cert? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm only 12. You're playing. And because you're bigger and more physical, and kind of I played with maybe my little cousins was another lasting memory. My little cousins, my dad's sister's husband played kind of just under League of Ireland level. He used to play rugby with St Mary's, so his boys were very in sport, always United supporters, which I hate. So I'm a Liverpool fan, and we'd be playing out their back garden, and so I had that kind of not only interest in sport, but I wouldn't mind getting stuck in the boys. So when I go to girls, there was people like some of them barely could kick a ball, or there was no kind of putting your foot in the ball and kind of looking for a pass was kind of brilliant. So I remember like kind of shouting back, going, well, I'm 13, I can't get me first. You know, this typically Dublin, you know, kind of we're known for a bit of skating, a bit of mountiness, but they're kind of the early memories. And as I said, it was Barcelona was huge at the time, and I was probably only maybe 9, so you're looking at 1989, 1990, so they were still huge, and they were huge in Europe, and they had that stripy kit, and I just remember thinking, you know, in my head I played for Barcelona, you know, that's where you always wanted to play. So they're kind of my earliest memories.
Were you always good at sport? Like, did you know you were good at sport?
The only thing I could say I knew is that, like, you had this label of being a girl, and I was good for a girl. Do you know what I mean? And I was allowed to play with the boys because I added to their game. You know, I didn't have to slow the game for me, or they had to move the margins or make any particular rules to me. So, you know, I remember playing 7-up. I don't know if you played that. You know, you play keep up. So many keep ups, and we were allowed shooting the goalie, and we play curves and we play squares. So, like, these are games I would love the kids to play now, because they don't play enough when it'd be your coordination and your timing, and like that's where I picked up any skills that I might have had, because we were just naturally playing outside. And then when we moved, like, there's only 2 lads I grew up with, you know, so I had no choice but to play, and the lads were into soccer, and there was a little green in front of us, and we had the trees, and we'd make the goal. They didn't take any prisoners either, so I made sure I didn't take any prisoners. And that's kind of where that, like, I didn't want them to treat me like a girl. I didn't want extra rules. I didn't want any special treatment. I was like, you know, kind of wanted to give them 2 fingers and stuff, kind of say, you know, I just judge me on what I can do and play. I want to be better. I want to be as good as you. And actually, I want to be better than this. You know, when I moved on to basketball, and outside that recreation centre across from the house we lived in, which my parents are there now, like, we had to be 20 odd people of some of the greatest basketballers that show up every day in the summer. We played from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, and I don't eat the toilet, wash my hands, eat in the bathroom. That was it. Like, and like, I don't know if you know, like Sharon Kelly, who else was up there? Like, loads of kids we grew up with that ended up being like really great National League players. You know, Lane Scally, Denise Scally was her sister West the States. Like, they all played on these courts. Like, that's where we grew up, street ball, and they all went on to be like really great impacts in my life and great leaders in the National League in the great, you know, 80s, 90s, 2000 of Irish basketball, you know. So it's a fabulous story, and I'd love one day to write a book about it all, just for myself, the memoirs of a sports addict, you know, because it's lovely to see the connection and how the journey evolved for everybody and how we reconnected, you know, later in life.
It also shows the importance of the environment as well, like where you were, who you're surrounded by, actually having people to play with for those hours as well.
100%. And I'm always first to acknowledge, you know, we talk about this cliche about community, but my community, you know, my mum and dad were extremely involved. I had a great upbringing, and they were very involved in that side of things. But from a sporting side, you know, my community raised me, and my community were heavily involved and impacted. And like, I remember Hugh Kilbride, you know, National League coach for Top Rovers for many years, Irish coach, Dublin coach. He came up to the courts one day and obviously had a rumour, and he's like, would it be interesting to go for Dublin trials? And I was like, okay. And it was, and we went, and I got to play like the regionals, which was like Dublin, Cork, North West, North East. Like, it was great. And yeah, all those, like, I could name so many that would have went on. Like Paddy Kelly went on, and he went to one of the camps, one of the only Irish players, I think, to be awarded this kind of scholarship to a night camp with all these kids from around the US. Paddy would probably kill me. I should have that story better, but I know it was unique at the time. Paddy Kelly got to go to this camp because just no Irish player would have gone. And
yeah,
that was the other thing, you know, the rival court up in Artale used to go down to the Clester courts in Clester Boys School, and used to play a game of pickup down there, and it would be a huge rivalry. But we all came together and we played for different clubs, but, you know, we're part of the basketball community. You know, huge rivalries don't exist anymore because Janet got school, secondary school is gone. That was Ken Black against Mark Ingle. Like, all these rivalries are gone, but they're all history, and I would have been privileged to grow up with all these players that were heavily involved. And as I said, heavily impacted my journey to basketball and onto where I am now in rugby.
Sounds like a great environment to grow up in. And then in terms of your heroes, Lindsay, who were your, like, what posters did you have on the wall? Who were your heroes?
You know what? It's really funny because I'm a Liverpool fan. I know your house are Liverpool fans as well. So I grew up with the kind of group Grovellers, the Steve McMenamins, the Robbie Fowlers, you know, the Michael Owens. And I had no problem with them being my heroes. So like I used to love Match of the Day every Saturday. It used to always be the FA Cup. My mom's dad was kind of really into sport, fabulous man. And I used to emulate all those things. Like probably one of my big sporting heroes were kind of the Irish guys like Paddy Bonner. Like I remember the 1990 when he saved like that particular green I just described. We were playing soccer. Like I remember the place was dead. It was actually like the only time I resembled lockdown. Like there was no one on the streets. Everyone was in watching Ireland against Romania in this, knockout stage before the quarters. And firstly when Paddy Bonner you could hear the roars, but then when David O'Leary scored, everybody came out of their house and all just stared at each other and we're like celebrating in the middle of this green. It was unbelievable. Being in my uncle's house when Ray Houghton scored 1-0 against in USA 94, and Ray Houghton scored, if I'm not mistaken, against Italy. Like I sobbed. The house was bananas, and I sobbed with joy when he scored because these were the moments and these were the guys I wanted to emulate, and those feelings of scoring that winning goal to beat England, to beat the Italians, to beat the teams that Ireland weren't due to beat, and it was lovely being the underdog. And I think that was the mantra I've survived by. That kind of I'll prove you wrong. And as Ireland as a nation, we proved so many doubters wrong all the time. I used to pick one as well, kind of chatting about my granddad. He used to mind us every summer, but my mum went back to work, and he used to love Wimbledon. So I never was really into tennis, but because, I respect, we turn on the telly, granddad, we turn on the tennis, he'd say, very quiet man. And he used to, be commentating on it, but, we'd watch the men's singles, the women's singles. And I just remember Martina Navratilova was big at that time, again, around the 1990s. And I think that was her 9th singles title in a row. Her competitiveness, again, she had the kind of mullet and the cool glasses, and she just wasn't afraid to be ruthless or be herself. And I think Steffi Graf was coming on the time. Snippets of just these, again, moments of her being so emotional, winning and overcoming the doubters, and just setting any doubts and setting new boundaries and new kind of milestones for others to achieve. And my second name is actually Lindsay Martinez, so you get slagged about that as well. Just the moments where, as I said, I kind of really love all sport, and it's, as I said, it inspires you. And I think she was definitely, I know Sonia, I definitely would have seen Sonia in the Olympics, but the Olympics obviously only rolled around every 4 years. But Wimbledon was on every summer, and definitely that was one thing I used to watch in the ground, and I used to love it. And she was definitely a standout for me, and I think, as I said, she was kind of a female athlete. She wasn't afraid to be herself in a time that was still probably, if we're honest, dominated by male athletes and those achievements. And I think, I said, for me, she certainly stands out in so many ways.
I know the landscape is so different now to what it was when we were growing up, but were there pathways, Lindsay? Like, could you see, like, you're obviously really talented, you're young, could you see any pathways for you to have any sort of professional career in sport back then?
I suppose, really, if I'm honest, I never thought about the pathway, but I had the dreams.
Mm-hmm.
As I said to you, I was at the top of the stairs, like, honestly, like this, emulating, as I said, those footballers that I would have seen, the Martina Navratilova winning the single championship, Dublin winning All Ireland's, being out around, driving around North County Dublin, listening to Dublin on the radio when we beat Donegal in 95. I'm right with that, I think. We weren't allowed, we were out driving, and, my mum and dad weren't really into All Ireland. Now, don't get me wrong, they'd be into the drugs and the local planes, so we listened to bits and pieces, but would we stay at home to specifically watch an All Ireland? No. So I'm like, turn on the radio, turn it up there, and we're listening, and So I had the dreams, but I was probably naive, to be honest, Marie, and I never thought of anything would really stand in my way. But did I really look at realistic pathways? No, I kind of just went day to day about my business and just enjoyed sport for what it was at the time. But it kind of, that hindered me as well, I suppose, because I was a bit mad at times where I could have maybe looked. Still to this day, I don't know whether I'd be good enough to go on a scholarship. But I often wonder, would I have, if I had a focus, if I had really looked at it, would I have been good enough to go on scholarship to the States? I'm not sure, if I'm honest. I think I was a late bloomer. I think I wasn't ready. I'm not sure Mark England would agree with me. He would have said I wasn't ready. He couldn't have sent video for me. I remember a trial. Denise Walsh was absolutely unbelievable point guard from Castle Island in Kerry. She was Ger Turner. She was the coach at the time. I had a really good trial against her on the Saturday in the National Wassall Arena. But the teenager that I was at the time went out and probably dished on the Saturday night and didn't come in to put a form on the Sunday when we played the Irish team in the scrimmage. And I couldn't even get the ball up the halfway line. And Mark was so disappointed in me. He said, what were you thinking? And, you know, I got very few opportunities to show what I could do during underage. Not because I don't think I took it seriously. I'm not sure I knew what was needed to show what I could do at that time. And yeah, that was disappointing. It was disappointing. And I'm glad I stuck with it and hopefully proved a lot of doubters wrong. And finally, when I got my opportunity with Maeve Coleman to get in an Ireland jersey, Irish basketball jersey, I'm so grateful. It meant so much. And all that I'd been through was worth it. I still didn't think I was worthy. I didn't know what I could bring to her, but I made a promise to myself that I'd never let her down on the work ethic anymore. And that was the promise I made to myself. But all the demons in my head saying, you're not good enough for this. There was one voice saying, oh, what can you do for it? What does Maeve like? And she was very much into her fitness and her work ethic. And I hope that I'm truthful in saying that I was very open to the older players and kind of looking for their guidance and taking advice on board and worked hard to get better. And then next ball, I'm co-captain with Michelle Fahey and then scoring 27 points against Iceland. And they're never my wildest dreams, but I think so. I had dreams. I didn't really look at things or have a set pathway. And my journey just has brought me here, thankfully. And that's where I kind of look at sport as my travelling companion for 25 years. And we've gone on such a journey of up and down. I've met fabulous people and I'm so grateful.
Why do you think that voice was in your head telling you you weren't good enough?
Because I've failed so many times. I've made a mess so many times. And I suppose sometimes I would be guilty of just taking it day by day and not planning. Same way as I've talked about my career. So it's like, oh, you get a job, you get money and it paid for different things. But, you know, I didn't kind of sit down and I always wanted to be a PE teacher, but for different reasons. I wanted to bring what I got from sport. It's kind of different. And as I said, it took me away from that, you know, rugby and having a family and getting married. And as I said, sticking to what I knew and what suited. And yeah, I just think I didn't really plan enough. And I probably, if I'm honest, like you're so complimentary saying I'm talented. I don't really think I'm talented. I think I kind of fell in enough with the people I was in and the people who guided me and people who believed in me. And I worked hard to try and be part of that. But like I've played with some amazingly skillful players, Suzanne McCord, Michelle Hayes, like Susan Moore, and the list is endless in the basketball, Evan Michelle Aspel. I could mention so many more. Football, you're looking at Sinead Ahern, Siobhan McGrath, who's just got player of the match and most recently final Dublin against Cork, against Breach, Stack, Breach, Corkery, Angela Walsh. Like the list is endless for the players, and that's let alone some of the world class players who played against the rugby in the World Cup. So I never probably thought I was that talented. I just love sport. I love the challenge. I love the buzz, and I love the people, and I loved winning. And I loved winning with the people that meant most to me. Like I never want to play. You know, I spoke about my community. Like we're now called DCU Mercy, but we were always Mercy School. You know, and Artane Border School. Like it's one of the same areas. That's where my mum is from. My dad's from Brookwood. We're not far from there. And it's my area, Parnell's in my area, and everything I've learned are the values of that community and the people around me supporting me, and it's steeped in great history, that I remind myself that's gotten me here, so I believe just the love of sport got me here, and a lot of the values, my mum and dad aren't sporty necessarily, but, they've given me great values of determination and commitment, and when you're in something, you commit fully. I'm very loyal, I'm very trustworthy, I'm very hot-headed and competitive, but I'll always have your back if you're on my team, and, there, as I said, the values of my family and my community, and yeah, I'm very grateful.
Lindsay, there's no way that you could have achieved all that you have achieved and are still going to achieve more without having a heck of a lot of talent in so many sports. It's just not possible.
Well, I think if I'm right, Paul Carrington was talking about table tennis. He was saying a table tennis person, a player who was better than him. And I always thrived I always wanted Siobhan McGrath to mark me in Dublin internal games. I always wanted to mark. Louise Kidd was another one. Because Siobhan was an all-star through and through, and I knew if I could get the better of Siobhan McGrath, I was on something, you know what I mean? And she pushed me, and she'd never give in, and we clocked heads, and more times we'd probably given out and cursing each other and dragging each other and, moaning at referees. But that was two competitors going at one another. Same with Niamh McAvoy Senior, would have played with Dublin, but same thing with, she was left-footed, she was kind of more endurance runner, I was kind of more sprinter, so we'd always pair up because she wanted to bring up her speed and I'd want to bring up my endurance. And it just kind of, that totally resonated when Paul Carrington said that. I was just, yeah, that's one thing for me. Like Linda Dungang, we're doing wrestling, I want to be with Linda because she's one of the strongest, or you're doing breakdown work, you want Junior, or, same with Gina Maloney. You pick those players that are better than you because you want to raise your, you're always trying to be better. So, same thing, I suppose, with working on the left foot. Like I'd always try to work on my left foot and taking shots with my left. And, I scored those 2 goals in 2014. They were both with my left foot because so many defenders were always like, take away her foot. And they're so used to female players being right-footed, and to be able to then have that second option, I thought gave me an added edge. That was where I was thinking, like, you're always thinking, well, what's their strengths? Well, that's actually my weakness, so I want to work on that and be the complete player. So I'm probably always trying to kind of stalk players really and see what I could get out of them and what I could pick up. Not tell them, just kind of work with myself. And that's where I'm frustrated now. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a parent now, and I am a wife, and I have lots of other responsibility that I'm meant to be adulting. But I mean, if you gave me an opportunity, I'd be better than going shooting or kicking the ball. I actually, this is the epitome of me, before the Italy game, I think there was a kickoff, and the ball went through. It was coming to me, and I called it, and I went through my hands. Actually, no, it bounced off my chest, which can be, that's why we kind of you're meant to turn to the side. So if it does bounce off the chest, you go backwards, and there's no scrums or whatever. And we had 10 minutes before the end to work on individuals, and I said to Leah Lyons, I said, 10 balls, and you put the most backspin you can put them on. With the snow, I want snow on them. Because I said, I'm getting 10 out of 10 catches here. I will never drop that ball again. Because I think the coach said then, we're going to switch players. And I was like, one back and drop. One back and drop. And he said to me after, he said 10 minutes individual, you couldn't have gone doing scrum setup or line out. I said, it's the wrong time to tell me I was switched out. And I was like, so I took every opportunity to spend 10 minutes catching my balls because I just was so annoyed, and I didn't want to let anyone down, and I didn't want to shirk that responsibility. I was raging. I'm still raging now. I'll probably go out.
Lindsay, basketball was your main sport really when you're growing up, was it?
Yes, for 20 years, and played a big part, I suppose, in my evolution.
So when you were developing as a basketballer, what did you have to work on most?
Mark was great with ball handling drills because he was a point guard himself. So we'd work on a lot of ball handling, a lot of coming off screens, taking the shot on the move. One of my best shots was probably the baseline move, and it was probably one of the hardest. I think, again, Paul Flynn alluded to that, kind of picking that sweet spot of the hardest shot. And you kind of, again, look at where players that have the lowest percentage shooting technique, free throws. You might shoot 100 free throws. We do drills like tennis balls or throwing the ball up behind your back, flapping, everything with speed or in between your legs, like catching it without bouncing the ball. So all speed, hand-eye coordination. And that was on the daily, every chance. And he'd tell me to do that at home, and I'd do it. There was never, I think, a period from the age of probably 12 to 28, 29, 30, where there was no basketball in my hand. Every opportunity I got to be basketball in my hand. And that's, again, if there's any advice I'd give for parents, like, make it fun and challenge, but like just to have a ball in your hand, like, I'd say I could pick up a basketball now. It wouldn't take me long to go back into the swing of things, because that muscle memory is there for so long and growing up. And, even like those scissor kicks, putting the ball through your legs, like, it's just all ball handling that I would have done. And again, bringing that move in, kind of hesitate and go off a screen, pulling up, shooting, or pulling up against it, go again. Like, you were doing all these moves. And that's where the NBA, I loved that. Like, I don't like the Lakers, but I'm in the era of like Muggsy Bogues and Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Dwayne Wade, and like all these amazing players. And again, you just want to emulate them. You just want to emulate all their moves. And this Euro step, someone to do Euro step, and you're like, oh, right, next week I'm going to come along and make sure I dazzle them all with my Euro steps. So, or a finger roll, or like the lads used to be able to board tap. So taking a layup, and as we released the ball, you'd like slap the board, and this was a big thing. And I jumped for about 3 weeks trying to hit this board, and one day I got it with the tip on my nail, and then the next day I was like my fingers, and that's what brought me along. Like, was the lads and trying to emulate them, and it's not because they were boys; they were just so physically able. It was so easy, and I was like, nah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be able to do that, and I'm going to dazzle you with it. So, it's just. I loved every minute, and if I was to probably hang up the boots at any stage for rugby, I certainly would head back to basketball. I really miss it now, and I think it's one sport that's really suffered with COVID, and it was really probably in a really good period after the Michael Jordan documentary, which, my God, it was a walk back through memory lane. Like, I loved every minute of it. Like, I just was like reliving my youth, all the Jordan gear that was available with my sweatshirt. Now I'm like, like anything I can get. It's just, it was probably, it'll always be one of my big ones because of everything I've been through with it. And I just got such joy out of it and such happiness.
So when did other sports start coming into play then?
Gaelic came in actually a period of time where we were transitioning from Division 1, kind of this Monday to Friday team. You train hard on a Wednesday, playing on Friday, and you kind of still have a social life over the weekend. But then we were kind of winning Division 1 pretty handily, and we wanted to go to National League. And I had a lot of weight to lose, a lot of fitness. I had a bad year prior to that. Mark had been signed with the Manchester Giants, so he went professionally coaching them. And that was probably my toughest year, which was really a defining time for me in my sporting career. But when I lost all the weight, which was about 5 stone in the end, I was so focused on never getting to that place again. That
Lindsay? 5 stone is a lot.
5 stone is a lot. I'd lost 3 stone over the summer, and when I came back to kind of full training from September, October, I had 3 stone down. I think I could have been nearly 4 actually, and by Christmas I think about the 5 stone. Really, as embarrassing as it sounds, I was in Total Fitness Gym, which was beside me. I had a membership. I was there every day doing running. A couple of the lads started in DCU with Niall Moyna doing their sports science. They were helping me. We did 150s, we did fitness tests, we did VO2 max tests. We were able to utilise all of the equipment in DCU's lab. I went and seen a nutritionist in the Bonsecours. Got a lot of education around that. Cycled as much as I could, and really when I was in the gym, yeah, my motivation was to say in my head, people, kind of telling me that, you're not going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to finish this session. And trying to drive through the pain of that. And yeah, I motivate myself in a very negative way, but motivated I was, and I did it. And I remember the first year of basketball, first year in National League, we had a couple of big signings. Suzanne would have came, Rachel Kelly, we kind of Americans for the first time. Tracy Gain actually was there. She would have actually been one of the last 2 picks for the New York Liberty, which is Susan Moran. By chance, we got her because the contract fell through in Spain. So, she was unbelievable. Division 1, played with Iowa State. And yeah, it was the fittest I'd ever been. And I think the second year in the National League, I ended up being voted female player of the year for the National League. And yeah, it was that kind of year, that in-between year, with Niamh McAvoy Senior said to me, come and play with Cornell Steepe. And I started in goal. And then I moved out to midfield and centre forward. And then I got called up to John O'Leary's team. But by God, these were teams who had kind of had played in 2003 and 2004 All-Irelands against Galway and Mayo. They'd lost. John O'Leary took over. But I was honestly, I was like a baby fawn. I couldn't on my feet. I couldn't solo. Obviously, I had good hands from basketball. I was athletic. But I had a terrible time. I just wasn't good enough. And I pulled myself from the squad. And then about 2 years later, Jerry McGill called again. He kept ringing. He would not leave me alone. I wouldn't answer the phone. And eventually he got me. He was like, just come to train session. I was like, I'm no use. I'm honestly no use. I don't know you're bringing me to a trial. And eventually, to be honest, I said, right, I'll come just so you'd stop ringing me. But I'll just tell you now, it won't be, I won't be any use. And yeah, the rest is history.
The rest is history. So you obviously went on to win an All-Ireland Football Championship, which is amazing and not easy to do. Was there any stage where you thought, okay, I belong here, I'm good enough to be here, I can make it at the top, I can be at the top?
Yeah, I was at a very different stage actually when I came into that setup in 2009. And I think I had missed the league because it always clashed with basketball. Jerry was very accommodating for me, and the girls were very understanding. That my commitment was to basketball, so I wouldn't be there for the league. But obviously, I would come straight in and give it socks for the championship, which was a long run in because it was a long break at that stage anyway from between league. And actually, some years I came in I used to come back in really, as embarrassing to say, usually around the semi-final. I remember playing on in the semi-final, I think was it 2009, 2010? No, it must have been 2010. Maybe it was 2014. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what happened. No, I think we played Cork in the league final. Anyway, neither here nor there, but yeah, the girls were fabulously positive. It took a little while to get in, but I was very lucky to have Macker Senior and Avril Cluxton there. I remember Elaine Kelly, we used to call Reza Kelly. I don't know if she's still involved with the back of the staff. She's a psychologist. I remember her comment, "Don't you have big paws, don't you?" And it was a comment, and I do have big hands. I was like, it broke the ice. And I don't think they knew what to make of me. Quite competitive, quite hot-headed. I remember showing someone at training, and as they got to understand me more, maybe what I could bring and my madness, I think they kind of really, they very much were supportive, and it was a very, very, very positive environment. I was going into Jim Kilty's kind of doing S&C there. Jerry McGill had obviously a lot of experience himself. He had a great backfield team, and I think everyone had a buy-in. I remember losing in 2009, and it was devastating. It really was, and probably more so for the girls that invested a lot more time. I was kind of like, well, Jesus, I would have been one lucky ducker to come in my first year and win an All-Ireland. But we kind of came back, and I remember being in Judge Robins at the time, and we were kind of, as you do, go out with your team and have a couple of drinks and drown your sorrows. I remember us all cheering to come on back in 2010 to win that All-Ireland, and that we did. And that team invested, and we had each other's back, and there were so many there's so many cliches and these qualities brandished around what it was to pick a team. I've honestly been privileged with so many teams that actually buy into the ethos that they believe in. So the trust, the companionship, I suppose never stop competing, your work ethic, you're pushing each other for the best. Like there wasn't a negative if someone was trying to be the best to you or you're not working hard, like we were called out. And it was that buy-in and that full commitment from those teams that really solidified us. And I suppose going through the loss of 2009 and making that commitment and fulfilling it, 2010 was a pleasure. The bus was late by an hour, nobody lost their lives, and we were so relaxed going into that final. Nothing stood in our way. And it was one of the most enjoyable games in football, and obviously the pinnacle at the end being on and that was me watching Ty Kennelly come back and win an All-Ireland with Kerry as he Irish danced. I remember Niamh McAvoy Senior sitting beside me watching that and said, when we win this, we're going to do the same. She didn't fulfill her promise, but I did.
I can just imagine you as well, like just fulfilling those dreams, Lindsay, that you had when you were a kid, like on the steps with the trophy. It's amazing.
As I said to you, so many dreams of watching these sporting heroes regarding the sport or the gender just living these moments that we talk about with sports, and they inspired me and I wanted to do that. Like I was only going to get one chance and I did only get one chance to do that. I lived it, and I'm sure there is faces in the background looking in absolute horror at this, number 12 getting uplifting this trophy on the table, and I didn't care. I didn't care for that feeling because nobody knows what an athlete or what a team goes through to reach those moments. Like you said, it's not easy to win an All-Ireland. So many great teams have only won it once. So it could be 40 years before you win it again.
So what about setbacks then, Lindsay? What was the biggest setback you had in your career?
I think that year I alluded to that Mark went to Manchester Giants and we got Blair in and Blair has since passed. Unfortunately, he was a great man, his wife Rebecca. And I have so much to thank him for because I suppose he didn't know me and I kind of went into it kind of huff. Mark knew how to pull my strings and he knew when to push me and he knew when to give me that arm around the shoulder and he knew how to harness my madness. I did, like I was fiery, getting thrown my gyms, throwing my gum shields. Referees didn't really like me. Wasn't afraid to, really be mouthy, and it wasn't becoming of someone who was meant to be an athlete or a leader. But there are moments we go through. That is defining moments where I was able to thankfully redefine people's opinion of me, thankfully. And Blair sat me on the bench. This was a year where I was really overweight. I moved out home. I didn't play anything. I used to play soccer in between that with Hammond Celtic in between basketball years, so I kept fit. But this one particular summer I didn't. I was really struggling. I'd finished school, put on a lot of weight, and Mark was there for those couple of years, but I hadn't lost that weight, And Blair was a professional Australian. He'd come over to play with Leicester. And he was really into fitness and he was into other players that worked hard. And I probably had a really, if I'm honest, bad attitude. I sat on the bench for most of the year. The more he didn't play me, the more I kind of been in a huff, and I didn't give him any reason to play me. And that was a real setback. That whole year. And I've spoken about this moment a lot of times, even when I've given talks about being in Killarney. We were playing Killarney in kind of the Division 1 All-Ireland final. And I sat on the bench for most of the game. Might have got about 7 minutes. And we were playing in the Mardike Green in UCC, and it was only newly done. It was absolutely fabulous gym. And Mark had come home. Manchester Giants had folded. They'd gone into liquidation due to money. And he'd come home and he was on the bench as assistant coach of Blair. Anyway, the game was in the balance and Mark called a timeout. He called me over, he subbed me in, and he took the playboard. He said, you're going to bring up the ball, he said. You're going to pass the wing. The opposite wing's going to back screen you. You're going to come off that screen. You're going to take the ball. You're going to look at the basket. You're going to take the three-pointer. You're going to score the three-pointer. You're going to win the game. And exactly as he wrote that on that whiteboard, it's exactly how that played. And that shot basically won us that title. And it was that one moment that reignited me to say, he still got this there. Like he still has that feeling wasn't a moment of scoring. It was that feeling, the belief of fulfilling that. And I didn't want to let Mark down, the one person who had brought me through all that journey. And it was kind of two fingers to Blair in a very respectful way. But it was also, I had let him down. Like, I hadn't given him any reason. I hadn't done any of them shots. I hadn't earned his trust as a coach. I hadn't earned that relationship, him with me, nor me with him. And for Mark to come along and instill that belief in me and put all that responsibility on me for this team and this result, and for it to go away. And as I said, it's one of those moments I could see myself outside looking at it on the telly in so many big sporting moments, whether it be the NBA or whatever, and the Ray Houghton goal against Italy or against England to win us 1-0. It's those moments that help reignite that belief in yourself and reignite that want. And that's where it probably propelled me for the 5 stone, that I had more to give. You know, I wanted to give more and I wanted to achieve more. And that was my big setback. And it still is one example I bring up of probably a defining moment of a very dark place with sport, and it really reignited that happy place for me. And it's quite selfish. It's not about the shot, as I said to you, Mark pulling me for that big moment and believing in me and reminding me who I am and what I've done and what I was capable of doing.
Is he the person that had the biggest impact on your career, do you think, or is there other people?
There's so many, but he really is, as I said, like, he believed in me when I made all those mistakes and those bad errors, and when I wasn't living up to underage basketball and I was giving glimpses, but really probably didn't fulfill. Like, people realise that, you know, you can be skillful or you can have this huge investment in sport, but to be an elite athlete, whether that's an underage international, there still comes a lot of responsibility with that in how you obviously your application and your investment, because it's a team thing. And that took me a long time to learn. It wasn't only about Lindsay Peat. It's about it actually was more about the players around you because of what impact Lindsay Peat had on me. And my behaviours and that I had, the fieriness, the wanting to win and the blaming of others because we didn't win. It was so petulant and childlike. You see it with, you know, younger kids. You know, I wasn't really over that. So I had a lot of learning to do. When Mark stuck with me, he stuck with me through it all. And the other big person was Meg Coleman, who gave me that chance internationally to fulfil that dream of playing basketball for Ireland. As I said, there's so many coaches I could, there's loads more who've had a huge impact, but as I said, I have to give credit to my, as a coach in front. There's other people, lots of my parents and lots of friends and family and other players. There's so many, you know, when I hang up my boots, if I have to write out a list, but so many people who I haven't mentioned, like, there's so many, but, you know, if I was to give credit where credit's due, it has to be mine.
You'll have to write a book, Lindsay, because no one is ever going to do what you've done in so many different sports. It's actually just not possible to do that now in the current environment that we're in, and just how much commitment has increased over the last decade or so. It won't be done. So you will definitely be someone who has a unique story to tell. So you've had loads of successes as well, Lindsay. What's been your greatest one, do you think? And it doesn't have to be something that happened on the pitch.
Probably, you know, getting married and my son. You know, that's definitely one of my successes. You know, he's an absolutely gorgeous, happy little boy, and it's so lovely to see him. My clips going shouting in the stands, and I got to lead him out as a mascot for Leinster against Connacht in the provincial finals, which is the last one we were able to go. He's come to many Ireland matches and travelled away with my wife, and it's my biggest. You know, I've had so many successes, but to be a parent and to see the, you know, I've spoken about impact of others. Like I have such responsibility and such love, right? Such love for, you know, you go on about this toughness and this resilience, and I could probably, you know, take a clap to the head and have stitches and break the leg, but I think, you know, no little person can, you know, reduce me to tears like he can, you know, and it's lovely for those moments. And I was on the phone, he's telling me about the Alwee Caves today, and just energy and awe and the love he has and the excitement to see him. And yeah, he's been definitely.
It's great that he got to share those moments with you and you with him as well. It's really lovely. And what about performances? So when you think of, when you think of the athlete that you always wanted to be and what you wanted to achieve, a lot of people talk about the flow state and just being in the moment and enjoying it so much and just having a great time doing the thing you love. Is there a performance that will always stand out to you or that will define everything that you're about?
Yes, I think there's so many like amazing moments I've had. There really has. But probably the turning point in the moment, I probably realised that sport is so enjoyable when we're relaxed. And I think, again, like listen to a lot of the podcasts you've done, it's so funny listening to other athletes saying the same. We'd gone through so many heartaches with Mercy not being able to get over the line for the National Cup, which is obviously one of the most coveted trophies in the basketball calendar. And all the great teams have won the cup, Neptune, Leicester, Wildcats, Talca Rovers, West Coast Cooler Meteors, the list is endless. And all the great teams I watched growing up, the Angie McNally's and, as I said, the Suzanne McGuire's, the Yaspers, the Katrina Whites. Again, list is endless of the amount of talent in this country. But so anyway, as this want and this competitiveness to win this, we couldn't get over the semi-final state with Glenmore. They just got us time and time again in one particular game. I'd say it was fantastic for the spectators, but we went into double overtime and eventually lost by a point to Glenmore, and I was floored. Anyway, we eventually got to the final in 2009, our first final. And Mark used to say to me, do you know what? When Lindsay Peat's in a good mood, the team's in a good mood. And I thought that was an unfair actually responsibility. But I mean, I used to be so, I thought to myself, right, if I'm so focused and so intense with this warm up and no one's allowed smiling, no one's allowed, you have to be concentrating your leg. Sure, everyone was so, so anxious about making a mistake because I was so intense. I'd say they were absolutely scared shitless to do anything, including myself, the fear of losing, which it's actually on your head. Like, it's just like, so what, you lose a game. But it takes that time of losing to kind of get accustomed to it. So I say, geez, I've been here before. Like, losing's not that bad to get over it, to go back to the final. And 2009, I was captain. First final, I think I had 16 points and I got the MVP. It was one of the most enjoyable games. I remember on the nice backdoor pass with Sarah Woods, Claire Rockwell was marking me. Couple of 3-pointers. I remember, I think Niamh McKay was commentating and giving Niamh Dwyer a bit of a shoulder. Now, Niamh Dwyer may have a history. I remember really throwing me off my game in Donegal, slapping me in the face, I don't know what she was saying to me, but she sent me bananas. So, definitely was in my calmest state. I remember, I think it was that final 2 free throws. We had Glenmore and foul trouble. And I really just managed the game and I was calm and we enjoyed it. I remember getting rebounds and just enjoying every minute of it. It didn't matter now. I only mentioned MVP because it was the icing on the absolute cake. And I enjoyed, as I said, I played every shot. I played every pass, every defensive moment, every rebound, every free throw. And then to lift that trophy for the club, my club, the only one of 2 clubs I've only ever played for, to lift that, the first National Cup trophy on behalf of DC Mercy's captain, was the pinnacle, and it was the most enjoyable. And it was one of the most successful years. And it was that year I went on to play with Dublin and Ireland in the same summer, and it was just madness. It was the start of it. And yeah, we won it again in 2010, and probably Suzanne, Suzanne went to Fordham. She went with Emer Howard. Not many Irish players went there. Suzanne was incredibly talented. She still is. And she got MVP that year. It was kind of, we played Glenmore again, and to win it back to back was just unbelievable. Easy to say now, but very hard to do when you're at that pinnacle level. Everyone's trying to knock you off your perch.
Definitely. So, Lindsay, this is a hard one now, and people always struggle with it. That's why I like asking it. What will be your legacy, do you think?
I suppose like Martina Dvasilova, that I was just that competitive athlete that never was afraid to be herself. And I never went by, you're often when we were growing up, if you were playing sport or you were wearing what I thought was cool, comfortable clothes, you were a tomboy and, you were good for a girl. Like all these kind of, I don't know, limiting opinions that were put on you by God knows who. That I just didn't really abide by the rules, probably on either side of it, but didn't abide by the rules of life, that I just, for my love of sport, went trying to find new challenges and new heights and bring in experience from one, and just, the girlie never, I suppose it's cliche, it was a nice thing that was involved in with kind of campaign, the girlie never stopped competing, and that really was it, because if I did adhere to all the things I was meant to do, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. As I said, the sports fanatic that wasn't afraid to chase your dreams.
And you're not done yet, Lindsay Peat, so what's next?
To be honest, I'm just happy enough to hopefully try and get back on a pitch for the qualifiers for the World Cup. That would be my goal right now. As I said to you, I don't want to be that player who's hanging on for the wrong reasons. If I'm still enjoying it, that's the main thing I've learned, that you're enjoying it. And that probably, as I said, looking back to Six Nations this year, did I enjoy it because I didn't feel I played well, or did I not enjoy it because, I maybe was a little bit overtrained? And that's no one's fault. It was, as I said, it was the year we had and the impact of COVID. Just trying to find that, not the drive, but just that push to know that we're going to be back on the pitch for qualifiers and have that, buzz for something to work for. But for now, it's a short-term goal. Don't put any pressure back in Jersey in a hopefully starting spot in a World Cup qualifier, and I'll be very happy in the knowledge that Ireland are part of the 12 teams going to New Zealand in 2022. That's the goal for now, and we'll leave that at that.
Well, if anybody can achieve the goals that they set, Lindsay, you can. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I loved every single minute of it, and I have loved following your career. I think I've told you before, you were one of the first people I ever interviewed when I started out back in 2010, and I have enjoyed watching your career so much over the last decade. So thank you. And thank you everybody for watching, listening as well. And please do like, subscribe and leave a review.